Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Can we have Honorable Sila to lead us in the Muslim prayers and Honorable Joyner to do the Christian prayers? Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ورثا واسعا مباركا 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 وأموت ابن وسيلة البدر اللهم افتح قلوبنا بعلم أعوذ بالله من شر النساء ومن سيء الشياطين وسلطان الله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Dear Lord, this morning as I contemplate a new week, I ask you to help me. I want to be aware of your Spirit, leading me in the decisions I take, the conversations I would have, and the work I will do. I want to be more like you as I relate to the people I meet today, friends or strangers. This I ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Joyner and Commissioner Sila. Can we have the registrar call the witness, please? And the secretary to remind him of his oath.
Welcome, Mr. Witness. Please sit down. Good morning, Mr. Witness. May I remind you once again that you are under oath before I pass the floor to Madam Chair for continuation of our proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Gomez. Welcome back. At this point, I would call on lead counsel to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson, Commissioners. Good morning, Mr. Gomez.
Morning.
Last week, you were taking us through the various grants that central government gives to the area councils. Now, you had spoken about the conditional grant and the general grant. Yes? Can you please tell us about the equalization grant?
Thank you, Lead Counsel. Good morning to you. Good morning to commissioners, the media fraternity here, and all present in this hall. Equalization grant, as the name implies, is just to bring all the parties on board. We have 8 different councils. By way of revenue, they are miles apart. Some, where their revenue base are healthy, others are poor. So in an attempt to bring about equity, in an attempt to close the gap, or to attempt to close the gap, that's what brought about the equalization grant, which should target those councils that are adequately lagging behind, especially in terms of service delivery. That's the purpose of the equalization grant.
And can you tell us which councils specifically it usually targets?
Yes, apparently it has, to the best of my knowledge, it has never been dispersed. But if it were to be dispersed, smaller councils, notably Kuntau Area Council, will be the priority, being the smallest in terms of size and in terms of revenue base.
And how was it supposed to be disbursed? Was there an amount or a percentage? How would the ministry have been able to determine how to disperse the grant?
Yes, there's a disbursement criteria in place as contained in the Act, and other factors also will be looked at, like the population of the area, the health status of the population, but the criteria is set out in the Act for disbursement.
Okay. Do you know what area of the Act, what section?
Apparently offhand, I don't know. Unless after I check and refer you to the particular section of the Act.
Okay. You were asked to provide certain documents. Were you able to find them?
As of now, no, because records are searching for them, records office.
Do you have an idea of when they will be available?
Probably this week. I expect them to be found this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, central government has projects that they do with the councils, is that correct?
Not necessarily or per se.
Okay.
It's all based on the subvention allocated to councils. As far as I remember, it's a one-off that the committee did that. Instead of releasing the subvention to councils, they requested, or the committee requested councils to come up with earmarked projects that is going to consume the subvented amount of $2 million per council.
Which committee is that?
The Local Government Financial Advisory Committee.
So prior to that, how much was the subvention to the councils?
As I said sometime last week, it started with $500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000 per council.
Okay.
But prior to that, there was nothing subvented by central government to the local councils.
So, as far as you're aware, there's never been an equalization grant dispersed to the councils?
As far as I'm aware, there's none yet.
And are there projects that are funded by development partners in respect of the councils?
Yes, there are.
Can you tell us about those?
It's called UNCDF.
Okay. What does that mean?
Which target United Nations think capacity building project or something, something like that.
Okay.
Not pretty sure what. It targets not all the councils, but certain councils, notably Kerewan Area Council, Masakongo Area Council, and of recent decided to, Janjambure and Kuntau Area Councils respectively. And made to understand of recent, it has actually expanded to cover URR, and that is Base Area Council.
Okay. Tell us about this project. What does it do? What is its purpose?
Yes, councils, they set up a committee or committees. They'll have their procurement committee. So they come up with their projects which they submit to the project, that is UNCDF, through its steering committee for consideration of possible funding. And all the necessities that are required to be provided by the committee, that is the steering committee of the project, are issued or are released to the project. The committee will now sit and look at each ward submission. But again, the project has its criteria for this, for qualification for disbursement. It's not that a committee, there's a ward committee under Council X will just submit and then the funds are released. All the set criteria will be met. One notable example is the establishment of a procurement unit within the ward. Now, these are projects that are indirectly executed at the level of the ward on behalf of the project, on behalf of government and the donor partner inclusively. So once the committees are set in place, for example, the procurement unit, and the other committees, they send all their details to the project steering committee, who sees over this documentation and then screen them one after the other. Once a pass mark is given for any given ward project, then the funds will be released. But let me add that the council must open a bank account, whether it's going to be Standard Chartered Bank, Trust Bank, whatever, but one of the conditions, a bank account must be opened. Signatories to that account must be identified. The procurement procedure, processes, all must be followed. There are a set of criteria before the project through the project steering committee will now release the funds to the account. And then the committee will now be withdrawing as and when necessary, with all the supporting documents that will be retired to the project. I'm not very sure whether it's on a quarterly basis or by annually. Can't remember offhand what it is, but it will be retired. And then again, the committee will sit over this and look at how the funds were expended during the cycle before the next disbursement of the next tranche of disbursement is done.
You have said there's a steering committee. Who are the people on this committee? And is it one committee for all the councils that are under the project, or is it one committee for each council?
Yeah, it's basically one committee at the level of the center for all. There's nothing like each council must have its own committee. It's one central committee responsible for all these council's projects.
Okay, so who's on that committee?
Wow. Can't remember fully who are there, but the committee is chaired by the permanent secretary.
Which permanent secretary?
Of my ministry.
Okay.
And other partners are Department of Community Development, the councils themselves. When I talk of the councils, the 8 area, not the 8, but the beneficiary councils, also part of it. Other stakeholders will be National Audit Office, I can't remember the total membership of the steering committee.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it the committee that monitors the projects?
That's right.
Okay. So before I go on this issue, let me just find something else out. What is the relationship between the Village Development Committee, the Ward Development Committee, and the council?
These are decentralized. The Village Development Committee and the Ward Development Committee of Council, they are the decentralized structures under the Council. The Village Development Committee is the big brother, if I may put it that way, the Ward is the big brother of the Village Development Committee. And all these committees are to work hand in hand with the Council, because the VDC are there right at the heart of the people. They are closer to the people than the Council itself. And that is why legally the VDCs were established that supports the Ward Development Committees, and then it filters to the councils.
Okay. And so the Ward Development Committee and the Village Development Committee are essentially under the council?
Yes.
And they are part of the planning authority for the council?
Certainly.
So these projects that you have spoken about, you have said that they're implemented by the wards.
Yes.
So would it be something separate from what is provided for in the Act? Because they already have a Ward Development Committee. Is it that Ward Development Committee of the council that implements these projects?
Yes, it's the Ward Development Committee under the council.
So why are the projects directly sent to the Ward Development Committees rather than the council?
Yeah, the project should be able to provide an answer to that, because the target is the wards. And it is the wards, of course, they don't do it in isolation, but who, together with the council, that come up with a project or projects that they want the project to intervene in.
And the project is funded by the donor?
Yes, UNCDF.
Okay. And the funds for that project would be separate from whatever it is that the council have budgeted for development?
Yes, it will separate.
Are there instances where projects that are under the council's annual budget or their development budget, I believe the development budget is to be prepared every 3 years?
No, yearly, annually.
They provide, okay. So are there instances where the projects within their development budget is transferred to the projects by UNCDF?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So can you give us examples of some of the projects that have been implemented by UNCDF?
Basically, some of them are gardens, vegetable gardens. Some of them are water. Like it depends on the needs of the people or the community that is to benefit. They come up with their own projects. Instead of the UNCDF deciding on the project or the nature or type of the project, the ward itself come up with the projects. So these projects vary from council to council or from ward to ward. When you visit some councils, you realize that their intervention is in the area of water. That is provision of borehole, water tank for water for the community. In some wards also, they'll prefer to go for vegetable gardening. All depends on the needs of the community.
Do you have an idea of how much funding is provided for these projects, maybe annually, or how often are they funded?
Yes, the frequency of provision of funds vary. And as I said, the project has criteria or criterion that must be met or that must be fulfilled before the release of any further tranche of installments to be given out.
Councillor?
Sure.
Yes. Mr. Gomez?
Yes, Commissioner.
It is true that the Act in Part 5 provides for the various types of committees, right?
Yes.
And ward development committees, right?
Yes.
Now, my question is, as the head of governance, do you receive reports as to their activities?
Yes, we do.
Can you provide those reports to the Commission?
All right.
Thank you. Council, you can proceed.
Activity reports.
Please continue. You were explaining about the funding for the projects. Yeah?
Yes. So, as I said, once any given ward that is to benefit from the project has fulfilled all the requirements as set out by the project steering committee, then funds are released. Now, these funds are not static. They are not static across the board. The sums vary from one ward to the other. As I said, depending on the nature of the project. Some may go for a borehole, some may go for a vegetable garden. So automatically or naturally, the figures will vary. And once the first tranche is issued, before the next cycle of disbursement, again, the committee has a responsibility, either directly or indirectly, to assess the progress, the status of implementation of those funds that were earlier disbursed before this next cycle of disbursement.
So,
and,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And also, whether there will be an increment in the next cycle of disbursement or not is all going to be determined by the nature of execution of the first cycle of the project. There could be an increment, it could be punished. When I say it, that is the word could be punished by a reduction in the funds to be disbursed because of either poor management or for poor utilization of the tranche that was issued or not.
Are the funds that have been sent to the account directly managed by the ward?
Yes, directly managed by ward.
When the funds are disbursed from the UNCDF, who does it go to? Does it go to the central government first?
I don't think so. To the best of my knowledge, it doesn't go to central government. It goes direct to the beneficiary ward, because they have to provide the account details, who the signatories of the account will be, etc., and then the funds are released to that account. But of course, our central government will know that so much is disbursed to Council A or Ward this, so much has been disbursed to. The central government will know prior to disbursement.
Do the wards provide a budget for the project?
Yes.
Okay. And how often does the committee monitor the project?
There's no fixed period of the monitoring in place, and although the committee's wish or desire is to go out in the field periodically and monitor these projects. But sometimes, due to the unavailability of the committee to engage in such monitoring exercises, doesn't completely eradicate the monitoring process. The monitoring process still go ahead, because at the level of the center have staff out there. Let me say CDAs, what we call CDAs, Community Development Assistants, or CDOs, Community Development Officers, are right out on the field there. That does perhaps proper monitoring before even the central committee moves out. So I can assure you there is continuous monitoring in place, although not as frequent as you and myself may wish by the steering committee.
The Community Development Department is under your ministry?
That's right.
Okay. What's its relationship with the councils?
Yeah, as the name implies, community development. The development of the communities is a responsibility under them, and they are part of the family that closely also work with the councils, because they deal directly with the wards and they deal directly with the VDCs, Village Development Committees. And since these are under the ministry, so therefore they deal closely or work closely with them, with the communities.
And when they're working on these projects, they're paid by central government?
They who?
The community development staff.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, not by central government, by the project, I think. By the project.
They pay. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Can you please clarify, Mr. Gomez, whether the community development staffs are staffs of public servants, or they are project staff?
Yes, they are public servants.
Thank you. Council?
Thank you. So they're paid by the project and they're paid by central government?
No, when you talk of pay, it's not monthly pay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like when the committee is going out on monitoring visits.
Your PS had initially given evidence, and he had spoken about a project that was being funded by the EU. Do you know about this?
By the EU?
Yes, in respect of the councils. So let me just
probably I can't remember, but
okay, because he spoke about he says that the Community Development Department designs projects together with the wards, and that there was a project funded by EU, and that when the first cycle ended, government put in $75 million in respect of that project. Does that bring any recollection?
Yes, that could happen, because most of these projects, they always require counterpart funding from central government. before the project can kickstart. It's one of their set criteria that government must fulfill on behalf of its citizenry.
So do you know any projects that have been funded by the EU for the councils?
For the councils. I hate guessing lead council, and I don't want to commit myself to say yes, and when we check the records, the reverse may happen.
Okay, well, can you check the records and then provide those projects for the Commission? So the ones for UNCDF and the EU projects as well?
Council?
Yes, he was not.
Yes, Mr. Gomez, as head of governance, directly responsible for the monitoring and evaluation of the councils, do you receive reports when it comes to all these projects that are being implemented by the various councils at any point in time?
I don't receive reports directly, but indirectly I receive reports because the department under the ministry, there's a department under the ministry that is responsible for implementing this project, and that is the Department of Community Development. So all reports, instead of, naturally, wouldn't come to me because that's the department responsible for coordinating this project. So the reports will go to the Department of Community Development.
Yes, as head of governance under the ministry, you have a unit under you, right?
Yeah.
And do you have the TOR for that unit?
Yes.
Can you avail the commission with the TOR?
Okay.
Thank you. Council, please proceed. Commissioner.
Thank you, Lead Counsel. Mr. Gomez.
Yes, Commissioner.
My question to you is, in all of these committees, are you a member of these committees that you've been talking about?
Yes.
You are a member of this committee?
Those two committees I mentioned.
Yes.
That
you are a sitting member of this committee?
The Project Steering Committee and the Local Government Financial Advisory Committee.
Now, have these committees met?
Yes, they do meet.
And you have minutes to their meetings?
Yes. For the Local Government Financial Committee, yes.
What about the other committee?
I am the secretary, so the other one I'm not the secretary.
But you are a member?
Yes, I am a member.
Have you seen any minutes to that effect?
Yes.
You have seen it?
I've seen it. There are minutes.
As a member, you have a file that you've been copied, or you've been given a copy of the minutes of the meetings?
No. Normally, when we have meetings, the minutes are projected during the meeting, and we'll review them as a committee from A to Z. And then if there are any changes here and there, the changes are made and the minute become binding or final. So
there is no hard copy presented to members of the committee?
Yes, it could be normally presented in the subsequent meeting. Like, let's say there's a meeting on Thursday, the hard copies could be provided, but equally a PowerPoint presentation where the minutes are there before the eyes of every committee member, and we go through it.
Yeah, that's what I'm leading to. You must have a hard copy.
Yes, in some way we have hard copy. Sometimes maybe we look at the cheapest. Is it cheaper to print for everybody, or is it cheaper to just project it? But there are instances we have had hard copies distributed to the members.
It could be cheaper, but it could be very expensive if something goes wrong. Because the secretary could insert something in the minutes that was not agreed to at the meeting.
At the meeting, yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I certainly agree.
Okay. So the minutes could not be a true reflection of what really transpired at the meeting, but it's a thinking of the secretary to insert certain things.
Yeah, that's very possible. As a human being, that could be. But as I said, it's not a one-off. In some cases, their hard copies circulated.
Okay.
But that doesn't stop the projection of the minutes.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is, you said that funds are disbursed to the committees, the VDC or the
WDC, World Development.
WDC. And they have to open an account.
Yes.
Before funds are placed there.
That's right.
Now, you as the governance director and sitting in all of these committees, who is the person responsible to ensure that financial discipline is within the WDC or the VDC? That is, funds are not being misappropriated.
Yes, it's not ascribed to one individual or one sector, but it's a collective responsibility. At the level of the center, we do it. At the level of the decentralized structures, they also do it. As I said, there's a committee, and of course, like all other institutions or societies or organizations operating bank accounts, they have signatories. And no single one individual can make withdrawals. The way those wards operate is that, for example, they want to buy a generator. If I am the secretary of that ward committee or one of the signatories to that ward committee account, I cannot single-handedly go and withdraw the money. The committee will sit, they will take the decision. There is a need to buy let's say, generator. And just like central government, they obtain 3 quotations. And both the procurement committee of the project at that level, as well as the other committees, they sit over it and finally agree or disagree to buy a generator or not.
Now, what I'm alluding to is no two individuals, the 2 signatories, cannot just sit and procure something for the VDC or for the WDC.
No, that doesn't happen.
So you have minutes to say we met and we agreed to buy a generator.
Yes, even at their level, the committee advocates that all their meetings must be followed by the provision of minutes. Whatever meeting they convene at their level, there must be minutes.
Okay.
So this is one of the set criteria of the project.
Okay, you talked about monitoring. Do these accounts audited?
Yes, they are audited by the National Audit Office.
By the National Audit Office?
Yes.
Do you have copies of those audits?
Yeah, I believe the Department of Community Development should have it, because the National Audit Office, at the conclusion of their audit, they report or they send a report to the coordinator or the implementing. And
it's for that unit to follow up on the recommendations of the National Audit Office?
Yes, either indirectly that unit or the project steering committee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez. Let me take you back to the basics. Are these committees trained in project management? Are they trained in project management, these committees?
To the best of my knowledge, maybe individually, that's possible. But as a team, I can't remember. As a committee, I can't remember.
They are not
but maybe individuals, some may be privileged to undergo training in project management.
Does it have a project consultant to ensure standards and value for money? Do they have a consultant who looks into those things?
I'm not very sure whether there's any, but certainly most of these projects, they come with consultants.
They come with consultants?
Either national or international.
Okay. Because we want to be certain, because we're supposed to write a report, and we can also look at where the gaps are so that we can move forward with these things and have them rectified. Now,
absolutely.
How are contractors identified at that level? Because you might go to the community and then they might not have the expertise to implement this project. How do they identify a contractor?
First of all, they are encouraged to, where possible, identify a contractor within the locality, because it has so many advantages. It's just like we want to implement a project, whether as a government, we sideline our own local contractors, and we're using foreign contractors all the time. It doesn't tell well. We need to empower them. And in so doing, that's why we encourage them, in as much as they want to execute any project, let them at all costs consider the use of local consultants. That is their own people. As I said, there are a lot of advantages in that. But then where that doesn't happen, that means they have to look beyond their shoulders to secure a contractor.
Good. Final question. What are the mechanisms put in place to ensure the sustainability of these projects?
Yes, thank you, Honorable. That has been a challenge in the Gambia, from the center to the periphery to us as individuals. Sustainability is a headache, it's a nightmare in this country. Many a times we see a project implemented. Once the project's lifespan ceases, give the project the next 3-4 years, and then you start seeing problems. Sustainability is key, and it is something that the project steering committee tried to inculcate to them, and by extension to the council. Because projects, whether we like it or not, someday it will come to an end. And once it comes to an end, it is our sole responsibility as beneficiaries of the project to take ownership of it. And taking ownership of the project is easier when from the word go, you bring me on board. You make me part of the project so that I take ownership of it. But unfortunately, or fortunately in some instances, at the design of the projects, I think I can do it solely by myself. Oh, this is a donkey driver, this is a farmer at Sami Pachonki. No need to involve him. At the end of the project, I'm going. It is he at that level who is going to feel it if the project goes wrong. So sustainability, we always ask councils to be ready to not only to take it up, but to support the wards that benefited from the project to ensure that sustainability is there.
Okay. Mr.
And yeah.
Yes, you can conclude. I have a follow-up question on that.
Yes, because I can recall, it reminded me a couple of years ago of a very wise Manjago. The wind blew off just one corrugated sheet out of the entire roof of a school building. The Manjago traveled all the way from upcountry to Mopsi in Banjul to report. Remember I said one, that one corrugated that the wind has blown. So one may wonder why. Travel all that distance to Banjul to report to Mopsi that the wind, heavy storm have blown one corrugated sheet out of the school building. We can learn a lot from that. One, that Manjago man felt he's not part of it, or he wasn't part of it. He wasn't involved. If the community was involved, they should be able to take the responsibility of replacing that one single corrugated sheet than traveling to Banjul to report the matter to Mopsi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you.
That is clearly noted. My question is, under Part 4 of the Act, I know you are very conversant with the Local Government Act, which talks about the powers, functions of local government institution. That is the general powers. It indicated in Section 53, delegation of functions from councils to district authorities. Now, you as head of governance, what is your role, and how have you taken this function to enable the councils understand that they should delegate their functions to the local district authorities? What have been your role specifically, and what have you done with respect to making the wards or the council understand that they should delegate function to the local district authorities?
Yes, as you rightly said, the Act provides for delegation of responsibilities where they are meant to be delegated. And it makes it a little bit easier sometimes with you, the one in control of that delegation of the power or powers entrusted in you. For example, if you look at the bylaws, and no, let me not even, yeah?
Yes, I wanted you to refer us to the specific bylaws that you want to talk about, so that we can follow what you are saying.
Now, the bylaws, for example, councils can always come up with their bylaws. Councils is like, general councils is like the National Assembly at the local level. And they are delegated the responsibility of coming up with bylaws. Bylaws within to cover their own jurisdiction and not exceeding the territorial borders of their jurisdiction. When councils meet to produce bylaws, they provide or they come up with bylaws. But those bylaws are not binding. They are only bylaws, or they are only binding when approval is granted. So at the level of the council, they can come up with all sorts of bylaws. But such bylaws will have to be submitted to the Honorable Minister for his or her due consideration. Now, when a local bill is passed at the level of the council and submitted to the minister for his or her approval or endorsement, on receipt of the local bill, the Honorable Minister has a responsibility to critically study or look at that local bill. In so doing, he or she has to consult with the Honorable Minister of Justice to advise or otherwise. In advising or otherwise of the minister, or that is my minister in this instance, he has to look at the bill. Two things are fundamental here and needs to question him or herself before coming up with a decision. Is the bill consistent with the Constitution or other laws of the National Assembly? Is it inconsistent? And if the bill is inconsistent, then the Honorable Minister has 90 days, which is 3 calendar months, to return the local bill back to the council, stating reason or reasons why the bill was inconsistent with the Constitution or other laws of the National Assembly. On the other hand, if the bill is not inconsistent with the Constitution of the land or other laws of the National Assembly, then the Honorable Minister gives his approval and then sends back that local bill back to the council for the approval by the chairperson or the mayor of the council in question. So absolutely certain powers are delegated as required by the law, and those
thank you, Mr. Gomez. But actually, what I wanted you to clarify for the Commission, if I may refer you to, just to remind you of what Section 53 of the Act provides when it talks about delegation of function. What this Commission wants to understand is the fact that the councils have already been mandated under the Act to delegate responsibility for the execution of whether services or projects or contracts. So let me quickly go through Section 53 so that you understand the question that I'm asking you, in order for you to shed light on some of these questions that the commissioners are asking. Section 53 of the Act says delegation of functions from council to district authorities. Subsection 1. Subject to the provisions of this part, a council may delegate to a district authority or joint committee of a district authority any of the functions specified under Part 2 of this second schedule of this Act. And then when you go to the second schedule of the Act, it is at the back of the legislation. It lists for you everything that you need to know with respect to what their responsibilities are and what they can delegate to the district authorities. It further went to say under subsection 2, a delegation under subsection 1 of this section shall not be affected unless A, the council and the district authority are in agreement, B, the necessary resources are made available for the performance of those functions, and C, the delegation of those functions are brought to the attention of the public. And subsection 3 of the Act says, a delegation of any function under this section shall not prevent the council from exercising the function and may be revoked as the council may deem fit. So it is not, it is my understanding, you can correct me since you are the Director of Governance if I am wrong, that the councils are already given the power and the authority to take along the wards when it comes to projects and development, provision of service, etc., as it is clearly specified under the second schedule attached to this Act. So my question is, as head of governance, who is supposed to monitor? Because you have stated in your statement that part of your responsibility is to monitor, and if I may refer to your statement, you said part of your responsibility is to monitor the implementation of the Local Government Act, ensure proper utilization of resources, ensure local governance and decentralization standards are adhered to by the local government authorities. So if there are all these issues, would it be safe to say that your unit has not been performing, was not up to the task to make sure that these councils live up to their responsibility as provided for in the Act?
Thank you, Commissioner and Chair. Yes, from the level of the councils, of course, they do some delegation. One notable one is the collection of rates on behalf of the councils by the Alkalolu. That's a delegated responsibility that councils should carry, but delegated it to the Alkalolu. Truly, we don't monitor adequately the delegation of responsibilities by the councils to other bodies such as the WDCs, etc. We don't adequately monitor that, but that there is delegation of authority or responsibility of functions in some instances. I remember in the case of Basse Area Council, they have, instead of the council itself deciding on the projects to be executed by the wards, they entrust the councillors to go back to their people and let them come up with projects. In fact, they went to the extent of requesting them to open their own ward accounts, where whatever is budgeted per ward, per budget year, is sent to that ward account, so that at their level they implement project or projects that they promise will be implemented, and then together with council they help monitor the implementation.
Let me further refer you to Part 2 of the local government under Schedule 2, which talks about the function and services for which the local governments are responsible. They have listed them, and I believe that they are up to 38 subsections. But what is interesting to note is the fact that Section 16 provides that the local government authorities can establish, acquire, erect, maintain, promote, assist, or control with the participation of its citizens, A to P, and they clearly specify all the activities that the local authorities need to do. So what is your take in respect to the fact that whether these local authorities that you have in the municipalities, whether they have been performing based on what the provisions of the Act are saying?
Yes, it will depend on the degree of performance, whether it's total performance or no performance at all. But clearly in some cases there will be minimal or limited performance.
Council, can you...
Good morning, Mr. Gomez.
Morning.
What steps are being taken to ensure that local government councils are responsive to the needs and concerns of the communities they serve?
Yeah, the step basically is what they promise to do, most especially in the area of their projects. Like when they say we are going to dig a borehole for community X, is it done? Was it done? If it wasn't done, why wasn't it done? Through that, then we're able to make follow-ups to ensure that they help provide as per the need or needs of the communities.
And what about if they are not done?
Yeah, then they'll have to explain to us why, what are the setbacks, what are the challenges or constraints that prevented them from executing. Because they are the ones who promise us. It's not us who ask them, do this, do this. When I say they, it is the council in their annual budget who promise us that we are going to do A, B, and C.
Now, in your monitoring role, what functions do you perform?
The monitoring role is not tied to one thing. We monitor all aspects. But as I said sometime last week, each monitoring process has its TOR. We sit and develop a TOR and say, okay, for this monitoring visit that we are going to carry out, you will be looking at A, B, C, D. And then the subsequent ones, the same. So all aspects is monitored. Manpower, books of accounts, stores, projects, are all being monitored.
Do you have all those reports with you?
We have inspection and monitoring reports.
Can you avail those reports to the Commission?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Council, can you proceed?
Thank you. Mr. Gomez, further to the questions that have been put to you by the Chair,
Yes.
just to reiterate, Section 48 of the Act, the Local Government Act, delegated certain functions to the councils, some of which the chairperson has pointed out. Now, some of these are that the councils can establish, acquire, erect, maintain, promote, assist, or control with the participation of citizenry different things like lighting of the streets and public spaces, fire brigade services, ambulance services, cemeteries, crematorium, mortuaries, etc. And there are functions such as water supply outside of the jurisdiction of the water utilities provider. Now, we have seen that, as you have said, in some of these councils, water is an issue. Most of them have water issues, hence the boreholes, etc. Why is it that there's no water in these areas? I mean, central government has some responsibility to provide basic drinking water to every citizen, right?
Yeah.
So is there a reason why quite a lot of these councils have issues with water?
Yeah. Thanks very much, Lead Council. I think those of us who are familiar with the rural part of the country will quite agree that there's acute water shortages or water problems or water issues in certain parts of the country. And we all know that water is a basic necessity of life, and therefore government has put in place a specific or special unit responsible for water issues in this country on behalf of government, and that is the Department of Water Resources. So unfortunately, anything to do with water for government, it has to be channeled through that department instead of our ministry. But notwithstanding, that doesn't stop us from perhaps engaging partners, because the councils, they know better which communities have adequate water or inadequate water shortage. And as I said, water is a basic necessity of life, and therefore all efforts must be made. If water is an issue for community A, then that community should be actually be considered in designing and implementing council's projects. But from the level of the center, it will be the Department of Water Resources. Even if we are to plead on behalf of councils, we have to channel it through the Department of Water Resources for their possible intervention, either directly by central government or indirectly by donor partners.
What ministry is the what ministry is the Department of Water Resources under?
I think it's department, either Ministry of Fisheries, I think.
Now, your ministry is meant to be the advocate for local government councils.
Yeah.
And did you say yes or no?
Come again?
Your ministry is meant to be an advocate for local government councils.
Absolutely.
Right? And every year you are aware of the constraints of the various councils in respect of water resources.
Yes.
And from what you have said, the National Assembly is also aware by virtue of the audit reports.
Yeah.
So what do you actually do to advocate for the councils as a ministry to enable them to have the basic right to water?
Yes.
For the central government, not donors.
Okay.
Because it's primarily the central government's duty.
Yes. Councils, whether we know it or not, they may not be able to take all. They may not be able to chew all. If they bite all, they end up chewing less. Should I proceed?
You may put on your mic and proceed, I think.
I think it's on, yeah. So, in as much as they may want to do a lot for their people, their financial position or situation may not permit them. And government, like most developing countries, don't have all the resources to execute all the projects that they intend to provide for the populace. But as you said, certainly we are an advocate of councils, and whatever we feel this project or that project is too huge for council to shoulder it, then we look elsewhere for possible intervention. If it is to do with the central government, then we look at the sector that is responsible and see how best to engage them. It may be interesting for me to point out that I mentioned here Department of Water Resources. Sometimes it will be interesting to see that sometimes they go to a particular region or community and intervene without the knowledge of the council. And that is why our advice to them and any other sector is council first. The essence is to minimize as much as possible duplication of efforts. Okay.
Mr. Gomez, I am at a loss because I think that you must be guided, you are guided by the legislation. And the legislation is very clear as to how you interface your intervention. And I believe that by telling us that your advice is that, I don't think it is sufficient. In the sense that if you go to Part 5 of the Act, it talks about planning functions. Do you receive the development plan of the councils in order that you will advise yourself as to what to advise central government?
Yeah, we do receive.
Do you receive this planning documents? This plan, as provided for in the Act, it says that all the councils shall have a planning authority that would submit their plans as to what they want to implement over a period of time.
Yes.
To first answer the question, help me understand, do the council submit to you as a ministry, you know, their plans, their developmental plans?
Yes.
They do?
Because these, yeah, they do.
Yes, so please kindly provide those plans to the commission.
Okay, I will do that.
Yes, because...
But just before you, just to help everybody understand, all councils have what we call strategic development plans. And these things we are talking are all embedded in these strategic plans. Unfortunately, some of them are obsolete as we speak, and we are just meeting to prepare the TOR and all what is needed or required to hire the services of a consultant to help develop the next strategic plan. So for some councils, theirs are still alive, but some they are obsolete, and we are working on this 2023 to come up with new strategic plans that will incorporate these things that we are saying. Because in these plans, all the sectors in the regions are part of it, like the education, the health, the agriculture, all in these plans. I can provide them for
you. Further to my question, I have requested that you provide for us, if it is available, the plans that will allow us to have an insight as to the interlinks between the councils, your department, the ministry, and central government. Right?
Yes.
I want to refer you to section 91, which talks about support from central government. It says the central government technical departments operating within the area of jurisdiction of every council shall support the development process of the council through extension workers operating at ward and village levels. So how do you monitor this?
No, we don't monitor that, honestly.
So
that support from the centralized structures. We don't.
So you are telling the commission that you, as part of central government, you don't monitor these activities that are being implemented or the services provided to this.
If there are any, we don't.
You don't.
Yeah, honestly, we don't. Yeah.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez, further to the questions that were asked and the answers given, you have stated that you're in the process of hiring a consultant to prepare new strategic plans for the council?
For those councils whose plans are now obsolete, like they expired now.
Who will be funding the hiring of the consultant?
We have UNDP. They have a project called EMP, Economic Management Project. And that is the project that is supporting the government to help councils develop or come up with new strategic plans. The Economic Management Project of the UNDP.
Okay. And is the UNDP aware of the government's decentralization policy?
I believe so. I believe they are.
So when they're funding this project, and when the ministry is preparing the strategic plans, does the decentralization policy come into play?
Yes, we put it in when we are submitting our work plan, because every year the UNDP through that project requests us to submit, to make our submissions. And because it couldn't accommodate the funding for the decentralization policy, then it was shelved.
So why I'm asking is because each council's strategic plan would have to take into consideration the provisions of the Act, and which in turn would have to take consideration of the provisions of the decentralization policy. Because you have provisions in the Act which are not repealed and which provide specifically for the devolution of certain powers from central government to the councils. So this issue of water, etc., these are all under the provisions of the Act, but they're not being complied with because central government has managed to retain these functions. Right? So why I'm asking if the UNDP and the strategic plans will take these things into consideration is because as far as I can see, the strategic plans and the funding, etc., cannot just be a standalone thing. It has to take into consideration the provisions of the Act, and it requires central government as well as the councils to to abide by the provisions of the Act. So is what you're saying that the decentralization policy is separate from the strategic plan and won't be done together or won't be considered together?
Yeah, our desire was to have them both, but at the level of the steering committee of the project, because the AMP has a steering committee, they also work on a budget for every year. So the budget just couldn't accommodate what was required of the policy. But I'll agree with you, I'll concur with you that it will be good to have them on board. And that is why we jointly submitted both the plan and the strategic, the policy and the strategic plan for the project to take it on board. But unfortunately, it couldn't take that. Notwithstanding, we are looking at other areas that may be able to intervene with the plan, with the policy rather.
Okay, let me take you through certain provisions of the Act. I think it would help you appreciate what I'm trying to say better.
Okay.
So you have, from Section 61 of the Act, you see that it provides that the councils have the power to establish schools. So Section 62 says that from such date as the responsible minister shall appoint, the sole authority within a local government area for the establishment of such categories of schools as shall be specified shall be the council for that area. So all the local government councils have the power to establish schools, provide education services, local education committee, transfer of existing schools, education bylaws, etc. All of these are within the purview of the council. Right? Now you have said previously that I believe there are directorates for education in the councils. I think you said something similar last week when we were discussing the ministries that have actually...
Yeah, what I said actually was that some ministries have directorates in the regions.
Right.
Like health, MOPSI.
Exactly,
regional,
right?
Regional directors. So
but those are still, they're still within central government.
Certainly.
Right. Then you have agriculture, agricultural services. These are all within the purview of the council by virtue of the Act.
Yeah.
And it requires that agricultural infrastructures be transferred to the councils. So Section 68 provides that as from the commencement of this Act, all seed storage facilities shall be transferred to and vested in the council in whose jurisdiction they are situated. So it requires certain things to be done by the central government for the benefit of the council. And Section 70 provides that for the purpose of performing its functions under this Act, a council shall establish a Department of Agriculture and Livestock Services, to which shall be transferred relevant government extension workers and such other personnel as shall be determined by the Director of Agricultural Services in consultation with the council. So those are other functions that should go to the councils, and government is meant to give them staff, essentially. Natural Resources has a list of items that are meant to be performed by the councils, and this includes their water issues, right? So you have all these things that are meant to go to the councils. Section 74 provides that for the purpose of performing its functions under this Act, a council shall establish such departments as it may deem appropriate, to which shall be transferred existing central government extension workers and other such personnel as shall be determined by the responsible ministers. Now, agriculture, natural resources, health, education, these have all been stated by the Act, and this is since 2002, to be devolved to the councils. Now, you have said, and I believe your permanent secretary has said, that capacity is an issue. The councils are not able to handle these things. But the Act provides that central government needs to give them staff that are supposed to boost their capacity and help them administer all these functions that have been given to them by the Act. So you now have a situation where central government is maintaining these functions for itself, not devolving them to the councils, not giving the councils staff to be able to carry out these functions. Now the councils don't have water, they have issues with health, they have issues, be it agriculture, whatever. And these are central government functions because they have not given it to the councils. So essentially central government is not carrying out these functions. The council is not carrying out these functions. The council requires funding to be able to do these things, which they don't have because central government cannot approve the budget for these things. You have a development partner that's willing to assist, to provide some of the things that are required by the councils. You have a decentralization policy which is supposed to support the provisions of the Act for devolution. Now you have strategic plans for the councils that are being developed by, I believe, the ministry and the development partners to assist the councils. But the decentralization policy is not being taken on board for the preparation of these strategic plans. Do you see how this would be a problem?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. It is important that it is brought on board, because it's just like an equation. Any missing link, the equation becomes incomplete. And to complete the equation, it will be important that the policy is ready and in place. The devolution of these services from the center to the periphery, or from center to the councils, as highlighted by you in the Act, is a requirement on the side of the center. But again, this hasn't been forthcoming due to several factors, one of which, as you mentioned, is capacity. And capacity is everywhere. Even it's in the center, capacity problems are there, not only at the local councils. So it is a challenge for us, really a challenge. Because if Sambujang is struggling to feed his cat, you ask Sambujang to feed a cow, maybe that cow will take it 2 weeks before the stomach is full. So again, any sector that has the intention to transfer its service or service to the council, the head of that sector should liaise, as per the Act, with our minister.
But do you think that the head of those sectors are aware that they're supposed to? Your ministry is the line ministry for local government councils, and your ministry is mandated to enforce the Act. And the Act makes these provisions for devolution of the powers. It's specific as to devolution of the powers of these ministries to the councils. Your ministry is responsible for advocating for the councils. The councils make up the general population of the people, right? So if you're not informing the ministries of what they can do or what they're required to do under the Act, how are they supposed to implement the provisions of the Act?
No, being informed, they are informed, because the ministry doesn't develop these acts in isolation. Every development of stages of development in the Act these sectors are involved, right from the regions up to the center. They are all part of the process. So maybe enforcement is lacking, but to be aware, they are aware.
Now, Mr. Gomez, if I may refer you to Section 50 of the Act, which talks about functions to be transferred on request of a council. During the period of your service as Director of Governance, did you receive any requests from the council to transfer such service? Because Section 50 clearly provides what should be done in the event that a council wants certain powers be devolved to them. Have you received any?
No.
You've not received any?
My office have received any, and I don't think even the office of the Permanent Secretary has ever received any request from any given council.
Yes, let me just refresh your mind on what Section 50 is talking about. It says functions to be transferred on request of a council. It says a council may, where any provision is made for the devolution of any functions, services or powers under this Act at the discretion of a minister or any other authority, request that it be allowed to perform the functions, provide the services or exercise the powers. That is Section 50, sub 1. Sub 2 says, where a request made by a council under subsection 1 is not granted within 6 months of the submission of the request to the minister or authority, the request may be made to the President, who shall, within 3 months of the receipt of the request, determine whether the request ought to be granted. Sub 3 of Section 50 says, the decision of the President under subsection 2 of this section shall be final. So you are telling the Commission that none of the councils over this period of time have ever requested for the devolution of some of these powers?
Maybe before that, because we look at the Act came into being in 2002. I was in there at the time. But during my limited time at the ministry, my office have never received any request from any given council for the transfer of these services.
Thank you. Council, please proceed.
Thank you.
Let's find out from the witness. The national policy for decentralization, 2015-2024, was it approved and adopted?
It wasn't.
It wasn't?
It wasn't approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Gomez, are you aware if any of the councils maybe provide roads for their communities? Either provide or build or whatever roads?
Yes.
They do?
I am aware, yes.
Okay. Which councils are these?
Basse, I am aware.
Now, are you aware that it is the responsibility of, the ministry responsible for the National Roads Authority to provide roads to the councils?
Yes, I am.
And there's a provision in the Local Government Act that where the ministry responsible for the National Roads Authority Act wishes for councils to build secondary roads, they would devolve those powers to the councils. Are you aware? Let me just...
Yes, I am aware.
Okay, and it is correct that there's been no such devolution by the ministry responsible for the National Roads Authority Act?
No, I'm not sure about the Brikama one, because in addition to Basse also, Brikama has.
Brikama has?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm not sure whether Ministry of Transport has done it, or it was single-handedly done by BAC, Brikama Area Council.
But Basse is on your shore?
Yeah, Basse is there. That one exclusively council.
So I refer you to Section 80 of the Act, the Local Government Act, which provides for local roads authority. And it says that a council shall establish a local roads authority for its area of jurisdiction, which shall be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of all secondary roads. The minister responsible for the administration of the National Roads Authority Act shall, by order published in the Gazette, specify the date on which subsection 1 of this section shall take effect. a local roads authority may perform the same functions in relation to secondary roads in its area as are vested in the National Roads Authority in relation to the National Road Network. The National Roads Authority may, with the approval of the responsible minister, issue guidelines to the councils with respect to the performance of their functions under this section. A local roads committee shall consist of such members as its council shall determine after consultation with the responsible minister. Now, my point is that there's provision for the devolution of that power to the councils, but it has not been devolved to the councils. So a council like Basse has taken it upon itself to perform that function, and this would be because they actually need roads. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right. So is there any instance where, I'm sure there are more councils that need roads, is there any instance where your ministry has tried to assist the councils to get this provision, to get it enforced?
No.
No? Okay. Now, when do you foresee that this strategic plan that you have talked about will be prepared?
Where do we?
The strategic plan that you have said will be funded by UNDP, EMP.
Yes, as I said, some of them are obsolete. So those are because you have 8 councils. So some are just a few months away and they are dead. So we want to target 7, if not 8, but 7 of them, because one of them, theirs is still active. That is Janjambri Area Council. The reason being, theirs was developed almost a year after the rest of the councils had theirs in place. That's why there's that gap. But we'll engage them, and if need be, we just come up with new ones for all the 8 councils.
Okay.
Yes, if also the reverse happen, then we just target these 7 councils.
But when would they likely be ready?
It's difficult for me to tell because the last time we were communicated to by the project team, that is EMP project, Economic Management Project at the Ministry of Finance, UNDP had an issue, can't remember what it was, but it's to do with disbursement of funds. According to them, they have a new system in place, and they have challenges with that system. And that is why January to date, as far as the project is concerned, nothing is moving until that problem at UNDP is sorted out. Otherwise, it was meant to kickstart during the second quarter of the year.
And the strategic plan would be for what period? Would it for this year or for next year? Starting what period?
It will depend on the council. But once it's done this year, maybe you can target January or next January.
Okay.
Yes. Because we never expected that we come this far and nothing is done yet because of the problem that UNDP has. So they couldn't release the funds to the project for onward execution.
Now, the fact that you've noted that there is serious capacity issues, and how important do you think this strategic plan or the national policy is supposed to assist in the governance of the councils?
Yeah, certainly it will assist, and that is why in these current strategic plans of councils, as I said, some are still active and some are expired. When these strategic plans were designed or developed, we put in a request to convene a donor conference, because we are aware that the council's resources alone may be inadequate to execute all that they intend to do as enshrined in the plan. And that is why we wanted to organize a donor conference for these councils. But unfortunately, as we are planning, God or Allah on the other side was doing his plans, and that coincided with the existence or the coming into this country of the coronavirus. And that's, again, diminished everybody's mind. Like the focus of the donors was to plow the resources into this fighting the COVID, rather than coming up for this donor conference to fund the strategic plans. But I believe it is important and it will help address many gaps that currently exist in the councils.
So, in other words, you are going to wait until UNDP sorts out its issues before you take action. Is that what you are telling us?
Yes, because it has been budgeted for and it has been approved by the project. And we don't want to send it back to the councils who did not budget it for 2023.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Council?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this is an appropriate point to break for coffee break.
Proceed to 12. We can break for 30 minutes for coffee break.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
or rather, does the ministry offer technical assistance to the councils? If they do, can you tell us about those?
Does the ministry offer technical
assistance to the councils, and if they do, tell us about it.
Indirectly, I'll say yes.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, we have this problem or issue of what's it called again? It was a project, again, it was UNDP that facilitated the recruitment and provision of a UNV, that is United Nations volunteer on behalf of the ministry, to come to the Gambia. I can't remember whether it was 2 year or 1 year duration, but to come to the Gambia and help our councils, train our council staff, you see, on valuation. And we requested councils to identify 2 staff personnel to benefit from this training, and the training was offered to them. That's the only one I can remember of.
Now, this training on valuation, do you know whether members of the Department of Lands and Surveys were included?
I won't remember, but the training took place at the Department of Lands and Surveys. That is where the UN volunteer was posted or stationed and conducted this training for this council staff on valuation of properties.
But you're aware that it is the responsibility of the ministry, your ministry, to provide a valuation role for all the properties within the country.
Yes.
And that it is someone from the Department of Lands and Surveys that is supposed to prepare this role.
That's right.
And that this role has not been prepared since about the time that the act was passed.
Yeah, probably.
And that this has affected the councils, all the councils' ability to collect revenue.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell us about the revenue sources of the councils?
Yeah, revenue sources for councils varies, but basically have rates and taxes. And before, you also have mining, and for some councils to be sand mining, in particular. The TDA, that is the tourism development areas, were also a source of revenue for them. The billboards was also a source of revenue for them. The cattle, what we call cattle tax, that is levied or was levied on cattle, was also a source of revenue for them. But sadly, some of these revenue sources have been eroded. In others, have been legally taken away from councils. But of course, they maintain their rates, their taxes,
That's the only one
rates,
they
property
maintain.
taxes, etc.
So out of the 5 revenue sources that you have listed, is only one that they maintained? Because you mentioned rates and taxes, mining, the TDA fees, billboard fees, and cattle taxes. So all the 4 out of the 5 are no longer with the councils.
Yes.
Why is this?
For example, when you look at cattle tax, there was a meeting of stakeholders that was convened, and cattle tax, I could remember, was also an issue, because cattle needs to be vaccinated, whether year in, year out, they need to be vaccinated. So at that meeting, there was this argument that councils do not have the capacity to provide vaccination for animals, which maybe some will agree, some will disagree.
Can I just ask, were the councils involved in this meeting? Were they present?
As I said, personally and myself, I wasn't part of that meeting.
But did you see any documentation in respect of the meeting?
No.
Okay.
No.
Please go on.
Okay. Also, there are what I may call incoherence of policies, because sectors have their policies. If my sector says, this belongs to me, and your sector also says, this will belong to you, we'll go and be hitting each other there, but it can only belong to one, either myself or yourself. So policies was an issue, because one policy will authorize or will mandate councils to collect, and another policy of another sector will also authorize that sector to collect. So if this is not addressed, maybe citizens could have been, I don't know how to put it, will be unfairly treated. So if this is not addressed, maybe citizens could have been, I don't know how to put it, will be unfairly treated, because
now,
I was supposed to pay for make one payment, but I'll end up paying twice, because I'll pay to council as well as pay to Gambia Tourism Board, for example.
Now, Mr. Gomez, working under the Ministry of Lands, which is the oversight ministry for local government councils, is it not your responsibility to harmonize these policies so that you can ease the governance of these local councils?
Yes, it's our responsibility, I agree.
And why are you not doing that? Why are you not taking that responsibility?
No, we've already convened a stakeholders meeting to that effect at Ocean Bay, to look at how best to harmonize this policy, because we believe as a ministry it's not fair, it's detrimental to the councils. Because if councils are mandated to collect in the TDA, tourism are saying, no, councils, you cannot collect, we should collect. So if tourism sanctions TDA to pay to them, and also councils to pay for them, that means the TDA are paying twice. So in our view, that is not, that shouldn't happen. And that is why we engage our stakeholders at Ocean Bay Hotel, so that together we come together as a family and see how best to harmonize our policies to avoid these such contradictions.
Thank you. I believe this is a convenient point, Council, for us to break for tea, and we will reconvene in 30 minutes. Thank you. We may rise.